Hello, welcome back to Ephemera Files with Tommy. We are still working on the July journal from a Simple Kit challenge that we are doing with Dear Julie. And I will link her YouTube channel and the video explaining this challenge below. We are slowly but surely getting there. I realize I have technically 1 day left to finish this, although it's not like I'm going to get my hand cut off or lose all my craft supplies if I don't get it finished. However, I would like to finish on time. So today we are going to be working on sewing in, binding the signatures into the cover, and hopefully we will get that done without too many mistakes. So let's just move this stuff over here. It's still handy, but it's out of my direct way. I went ahead on these and punched the holes for the signatures. I have them clipped and everything. I left this one to show how I did that. And so we shall move this to the side. I think that I may have to do some adjustments on my camera because it's like a really wide shot here. And I know that maybe it might be a little hard to see what I'm doing. So I will work on that. But right now I'm trying to get this video shot before my hair appointment. See this mess? So we're gonna work with that. In order to punch this, I'm going to need my awl and my punching pad. And I also will use my pokey tool. I don't have a clue what this thing is actually for. I inherited this from my husband's grandmother. She gave me boxes upon boxes of craft supplies and tools before she died. And I use that all the time. It is one of my favorite tools, not only because it is so useful, but because it has memories with it. So let's get this started. I have already determined that my pages are 6 by 6. So I am going to put my little paperweight over here so that the cover quits flipping up on me. I will take my ruler, and not all of these pages are going to measure 6 inches up. So the first thing I need to do is find the center of each page. Like this one here is just under 6. But if I scooch it one little dot, which I think is a 1/16 of an inch, then I am centered. So I'm going to punch, and I've already determined these numbers. I'm going to punch at 3, and then 2 away, so that's at 1, and then 2 away, and that's at 5. Those are the same dimensions we used when we punched this, and I will link this video below as well. And if I can figure out how to create a playlist of creating this whole journal, I will also do that. Now, this is a trick that I use because I punch my papers one at a time. I will put that pokey tool through the center hole. Then as I punch my other papers, I will simply line them up on there as well. So 3, 1, and 5. Other people I know can punch multiple pages. I have trouble keeping my pages lined up. Even with clips and binders and such, I have trouble keeping them lined up. This one is also less than 6 inches. It is 5.5, so I need to punch my center at 2 3/4. And then I cheat. I move my little number 3 over to where the center is because I know I need to go 2 inches away from that and 2 inches away from that. And that keeps me from having to make so many math mistakes. Here's my large envelope. I went ahead and trimmed the top off so that I could make my pockets. And I trimmed it at 6 inches. so that it fits nicely into the book. The graph paper is a little tricky because it was in that composition book. It has a bunch of holes already, so in order to not get these holes mixed up with the ones I want to poke, I have to make them just a little larger so that I can tell the difference. Can you see the little holes? And I just had to make the other holes bigger in order to tell them apart. Feed that onto that tool. And if you don't get them perfect, it is rather forgiving. The thread that you use will move somewhat. And let's see, this was also not 6 inches. It is 5 and, ooh, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 7/16. Oof, that's a lot of math. Okay, so I know that half of 5 is 2.5, and then I said 7 on this, so I need to go about, now this doesn't have to be perfect, about 3 marks. 1, 2, 3. So I will punch just right in between those 2 marks. It should be about center, and then I'm just going to move my ruler again so that I can go to the 1 and the 5. Sometimes you just have to make it as simple as you can just so you don't lose your mind trying to figure out what it is that you wanted to do. And like I said, it's a junk journal. It's very forgiving. Very forgiving. And I don't know anybody who couldn't use a little forgiveness. Let me get philosophical on you for a minute. All right. So we can set these to the side. Don't think I'll be needing to punch any more holes with that. All right, now this is where we need to put our paper clips. Let's scoot this up here a little bit so I'm not having to stick my head into the screen to find them. I prefer my long paper clips for this, but I've used a lot already over here to hold those together. I may just have enough to do this job though. Look at that, I did. All right, so now that is lined up. I can take this out, put it back into my tool caddy, and clip this together. Move this out of the way. Now, this is signature 1, so I want to make sure I have them in order. There's 1. Pretty sure that was 5, yes. 4, 3, and 2. So the next step will be sewing them into this, and I will have to get my thesaurus back out again to poke some more holes because I don't have the holes in this part yet. So what I will do is line this up right here, get this back out, slide it under, and then there's not any measuring on this one. I just have to somehow get my, I'm just going to close it. I'll just use the back cover because it's fighting with me. Now line this up. Put a clip on it up here to make sure that it stays lined up. And a clip down here. Because this one does matter if they are lined up or not. Otherwise it's going to be a really hot mess. So make sure that it is lined up on both ends. There we go. We'll take our awl and we're going to punch all of these holes. There are 15 of them in this particular one that I am making. Takes a lot of muscle. You can see I'm gathering some glue on there. I need to clean that off occasionally. And like I said, this is the first time I've made 5 signatures. Mine tend to have 3, as I have noticed a lot of journalers, I don't even know the proper term on that one, tend to have 3 as well. However, I am trying to, yes, there we go. I am trying to let this lay flat. So now it is time to glue this in. These pieces over here for the outside, I was trying to remember what I was doing with them. All right, so I'm done with my punch pad. And I want to get my glue out. Now, I'm going to be careful this time to not get a lot of glue on here. I simply need it to be around the edges where this will sit, and then I'll put some between those rows of holes, but I don't want to cover up where those holes are. But I do want to make sure that this stays when I glue it, or when I put it together. When I glue it, yes, when I glue it together. This is not going to show, so I'm not worried about the bumps and the lumps. When I was putting the muslin on here in the first place, I was trying to show you my technique for applying fabric, even though I knew that it was going to be covered up. Because I feel like it's always good to get new tips and tricks, because no one person knows everything there is to know about junk journaling. Although there are a few people I follow on YouTube that I'm pretty sure are pretty close to knowing everything there is to know. Okay, so I'm going to set this on there, and before it gets a chance to set up, I'm going to get my pokey tool and make sure that I am lined up. I need to find that center hole back here. Now, I know that I'm lined up with that, and so now I am going to turn this, because I feel like that's the way it was lined up, because I had a little bit sticking up at the top that I didn't think I would have. So I must be just slightly off center. Imagine that, I'm just slightly off. It's nothing unusual. There we go. So we should be all lined up now. Maybe. Oh, I'm getting caught in the muslin. That's my problem. Oh, I'm not even on camera. I am so sorry. I just took it right off the desk. There we go. There's that. And that. And then that one. Yes. There we go. So I'm going to get out my brayer. Press it down. And like I said, this is going to be covered up by the signatures, and it really doesn't bother me that it's torn right there. I think it just adds to the effect. So I still have a few minutes before I have to leave for my hair appointment. So let's see how far we can get on here. I'm going to start with signature 1. And we are just going to do a simple binding. I'm not going to do any crazy crisscross or anything. Each one of them is going to have its own thread that is attaching it in to the signature. The way that I measure for how much I need, I go 1, 2, and 3. That gives me extra to play with. It's not going to be wasted because I put it right into my scrap bin. What doesn't get used. Now what I need to decide is, do I want my ties to be on the inside or the outside of the signature? And here's a trick, and I cannot remember who I saw it from. I will try to find out and link that person below. In order to keep your string from being pulled out as you're sewing, tie it around something. Leave yourself a tail like that, but tie it around something that's bigger than the hole, so that when you go in to the hole, you do not pull it all the way through. So I think that I am going to have this one tie on the outside. So the first thing I will do is come to the back here, and I'm going to start in the center of that first row of holes that we punched. I'll pull that on through. And then I will come through the center, make sure I have it right side up, I do. Come through the center of, and this is sometimes where it gets tricky, the center of this signature. When you try to go through multiple papers, sometimes you miss a few. So I find it helpful to undo the paper clips on one side so that I can kind of feed my needle through without guessing where the holes are on the next piece of paper. And if I have to go through and do it one page at a time, I will do it one page at a time. Because then I'm not guessing, I'm not missing the hole, I'm not wiggling it around and making the hole bigger and making it look awkward. The paper clips are supposed to hold it together, but they don't always. And I prefer not to rely on the paper clips solely. I want to make sure that I have it lined up correctly. Now, there are other people who do this so quickly, and they do it so easily, and I'm sure it's because they've had much more practice than I have. I mean, I've only been doing this since January, and here we are at the end of July. And there we go. And we'll pull that through. And you want it to be snug, tight as you can get it. And we're going to go through these holes up here, and this one's a little easier because we already have that center one lined up. Then it should go at least through a few pages at a time in the correct place. Sometimes you have to help it a little bit. And then we're going to go through this top hole that I have right there. And we're going through a lot of thicknesses here, so sometimes it's a little hard to pull. Not everybody does the extra piece in there. I don't always do the extra piece in there, but this time I felt like it needed it. So we're going to pull that snugly. And we're going to go through this bottom hole here and through the bottom holes in our signature. And by this time you should be able to take off the paper clips. That will allow you a little more movement and leeway in seeing what you're doing. And you know, I'm probably making this way more difficult than it has to be. That tends to be my life story. However, this works for me for now. Pull that nice and tight and snug. Now, this time we're going to go back through this center where we started. All the way through. Make sure you're not trying to go through the knot that is tied on your safety pin. Goodness, that's why it was so hard. You're just going to pull that tight. Now, I tied that on the wrong side of the safety pin, of course. So now I have to try to get the knot undone, which I can do. I'll get my little tweezers here, and that will help me pull on that. I'm gonna get my head in the way, sorry, so that I can see what I'm doing because it's very, very small. If I had not tied this, if I had tied it on that side of the safety pin, I could have just slid it off because that knot would have been right up against the spine of the book and not been an issue like this is. I'm probably not going to edit this part out because I want you to see that sometimes things don't always go according to plan. But you can still work with it. Maybe. I'm so sorry you're looking at the back of my head. I'm so sorry that I'm having to get my face down in here myself. There we go. I think that'll do it. Looks like I am unraveling my thread as I'm doing that. Let's try it this way. Let's go through there and just grab all of them and pull them out. There we go. That should work. Aha! Yay! Oh, sorry about all that, but sometimes things just don't work the way that you expect them to. All right, now for this part, pull it tight again and make sure that you have your tails here. Go ahead and take your needle off on either side of that string, and then you're going to tie your knot. And I like to tie with what is called a surgeon's knot. You do the first one, the crisscross, like you're tying your shoe. The second one, you start the same way, just like that. Can you see that? But then you bring this tail through again, and then you just pull it down, and you have a knot that is not going to slip or slide. And these are your tails. If they were on the inside of the journal, You could tie little dangles on them and have them hanging out the bottom. If they're on the outside, you can do the same thing, or you can tie them into bows. You can do all kinds of things. I'm going to leave mine long because I don't know what I'm going to do with them yet. And, whoops, I have it upside down. So, there is our first signature. And we're just going to repeat that same process for the other signatures. And in the next video, because I'm getting ready to cut this one off, you can repeat that with these other signatures, making sure that your pockets are on the right direction. If you have pockets that are folded, or if you have pictures that you want, I want to make sure that my part 2 page is in the front. Line them up the same way that you did. It will get a little bit, in one way it'll get a little bit easier because you know what you're doing. In another way it'll get a little bit harder because you're now having to work with these over here as you work your way to the back. So I will go ahead and put these in, and then we will see where we go next in this July Journal from a Simple Kit challenge. Thank you for joining me today, and as always, be kind.